यत्संकल्पा तपति तपनो वाति वात समिंदे वह निर्धते धरणिरुददे लंघते नैव वेलाम् सोऽयं श्रीमान् निखिलजगताम् अन्तरात्मावतीर्णो धर्मं रक्षन् दिशतु कुशलाम् स्वामी नारायणोऽयं गुणातीतोऽक्षरं ब्रह्म भगवान् पुरुषोत्तमः जनो जानन्निदं सत्यं मुच्यते भवबन्धनात्। सजान स्वामी महाराजनी जय, अक्षर पुरुषोत्तम महाराजनी जय, गुणातीतानंद स्वामी महाराजनी जय, राधा कृष्ण देवनी जय, सियावर रामचंद्र भगवाननी जय, गुरु हरि प्रमुख स्वामी महाराजनी जय। In the divine presence of Lord Swaminarayan, in the equally divine presence of my Guru Hari Pujya Pramukh Swami Maharaj, most warm presence of Mukesh Bhai, and so many of my friends who are also present today. It's not only that AMA feels comfortable with speakers like us, but after a long time, even I feel comfortable with AMA. It's hardly that we sadhus move out, but there is something special in the way that people gather here. And maybe you call that attitude, or maybe you call that inner feelings. But something warm touches people. And I tell you, I am not the only speaker who is sharing this view. I just wanted to let you know that I admire the organizers for organizing this specially inspiring seminar. And internally, I truly thank the person who has worked out these titles. And just in the beginning, somebody told me that Mukesh Bhai himself has worked out the titles. The reason is that the wonder of attitude. Then you have magic of motivation, the power of perseverance. But if I can add that apart from these 5 days, if you add one more title, the strength of prayer, I think all would have been completed. Because all 5 things, if you want to put it in a nutshell and inspire yourself continuously, you have to start talking to yourself, and that could turn you mad. But if you don't start talking to yourself without the help of God, then you can't go ahead in the right direction. So the first thing I wanted to mention to you is the topic attitude is full of wonders. And I did not really want to start like this, but I want to start like this because of what just Mukesh Bhai mentioned. He mentioned an incident between the fight of David and Goliath. It becomes more important if any of you have ever read the story and life of Michelangelo. A beautiful book has been written on him by Irving Stone, and the name of the book is Agony and Ecstasy. If you know the character of Michelangelo, he's a sculptor. Again, it fits in with the motto that you have given. And he's a sculptor beyond expectation of a human mind. We happen to have the privilege to go to Florence, Italy, to go to Rome and see some of the wonderful structures and sculptures that Michelangelo has created. We saw the Pieta, but the most powerful, the most beautiful, the most balanced sculpture ever been created by a human being is that of David. And there was a time in the Christian system that corpses were buried. Michelangelo was the first man who privately and secretly went against the church and dissected the corpse to understand the anatomy. After he made David a so perfectly balanced sculptor of the human being, Leonardo da Vinci, another great artist, came to Michelangelo, and you know what he said? He said, "Angelo, you have murdered art." And Michelangelo said, "But how do you think I have murdered art?" He said, "If anybody tries to make a better human anatomy, he will either over-exaggerate it or underdo it. After doing the David, nobody can do anything else to art." Imagine a person at the age of 24 succeeds in making a beautiful sculpture, but the power behind this simple boy was his attitude. And that attitude is something unimaginable. In the book, while he's learning from his guru Bertaldo, who is teaching him sculpture, so many people come and tell him that, "Angelo, why sculptor?" Because sculptor and artist, they have a very miserable life. So do poets. Because they have to be happy amongst themselves. But sculptor has a miserable life because somebody told Michelangelo that you have to make a sculpture, then go around and find clients and say, "Please buy my sculpture, buy my sculpture, buy my sculpture." But if you do business, then clients come to you. If you do horse racing, then gamblers come to you. If you do things which are in the heart of the people, you don't have to go and beg. So one of his friends is telling Michelangelo that I have placed business first, then second horse racing, then stealing, then this, then this, then this, a list of 20 things, and he said, I place marble sculpting last. And then he turns to Michelangelo and he says, "What about you?" And do you know what he says? He says, "I say sculpting and my list is over." Look at the attitude of a guy. He says sculpting and his list is over, there is nothing else in his mind. Only then you can produce something beautiful like that. But then again, the David he has made, I'm telling you from history because I have studied him. The David he has made, if anybody has seen it, is about 7 feet tall. Florence had been beaten by another country. It was a slave country. And once that king went away again out of Florence, there was a stone known as La Duco. Duco meaning a big stone, marble stone. That stone had a gash in the middle. So that stone wasn't complete. And the people of Florence said that if anybody can make a beautiful sculpture out of this stone which has a gash in the middle, we will place it in the square of Florence and make it as one of the best sculptures of Italy. Everybody went around that stone. To tell you the truth, even Leonardo da Vinci came. Everybody came, but nobody could think of making something beautiful out of that stone. And this is Michelangelo. He's walking. He was always shabby, poor, and Da Vinci was always in silk robes, moving around. He had 10 people around him. Angelo was alone, a lonely man. When he went to that place, he decided that he wanted to make David out of that stone. But the problem was, every sculptor, including his guru, everybody had made David, and you know the story as he just explained. The Philistine army was there, and the Jewish army was going. And that's when they said that instead of two armies fighting, if you have best fighter from our side was Goliath, and best fighter from your side, and nobody wanted to fight Goliath, and everybody pushed this David at the front, that you go and fight. Now think, the story comes as he has said is perfectly correct. The story goes that after David beats Goliath, listen to this, then David cuts off his head, holds his head in his hands, and cries with great cheer. This is the scene of David. Every sculptor before Michelangelo has made David, either in bronze or stone, but with the head in his hand and crying with joy, and David, a young boy, and a massive head in his hand. This is the structure. Now see, Angelo did not have room to have two little statues inside that stone. Do you know what he did? He has created David. To incorporate that gash in the hole, he made David half foot up, so there is a gash in the middle which fits into the leg. He has made David with no sling bag, but just a sling and only one stone. He has made David that looks into the eye, up into the sky. And then when people started asking him, Michelangelo, why is your David does not have the head of Goliath? And Michelangelo says, after killing him, it's anticlimax. He said David actually beat Goliath the moment he decided, had an attitude that I will fight him, he had won him. So my David has an attitude. The other people's David is an anticlimax. After you beat somebody, it's an anticlimax. So my David is thinking that I will fight Goliath before the fight. I think the biggest challenge you face is always before the fight and never after. So he said, my David is deciding whether I'll fight Goliath or not. And the beautiful part he has said, that though in the real history, David had a bag of stones and he hit him stone after stone, my David is so confident that he knew that one stone is enough, so he only gave him one stone. Imagine, it is because of the attitude of the sculptor that the sculptor still remains one of the best sculptors in the world. So the wonder of attitude is, if you have an attitude inside you, you can even put that attitude in stone. So don't worry, if you have a good attitude, you can breathe it into your family. If you have a good attitude, you can breathe it into your business. You can breathe it into everything around you. But the first fact is you need to have a very good positive attitude. Now the greatest thing I wonder about attitude is that the description of attitude is very simple, straightforward. Now listen to this, how I define it. You might not agree with you might have an attitude against it, but no problem. But I feel that we should define it like that. That attitude is how we relate, respond, and react. Relate, respond, and react to our events and environment. It's not just if you get up in the morning and start swearing at the weather. It's an attitude problem. You can't change it. Oscar Wilde says, everybody on this earth complains about the weather, but not a single guy can do any damn thing about it. Every day we start complaining in the papers with ourselves. Oscar Wilde beautifully put it. So how you respond, react, and relate to your events and environment, that is your attitude. How you face life. What is your personal outlook to everything? So it seems so simple, but the biggest complication is the application. It seems so simple, but when you start applying the secrets into your life, it becomes tenfold, multifold, a millionfold complicated. If I was to describe this in a very simple way, that somebody told me there'll be a total of 1,000 people here. But to put it another way, Mukesh bhai, there are 1,000 different attitudes here. And it makes a big, big difference. Because some people have just come just to listen. Some people have come to just feel that because Brahmavihari Swami is coming, I must show my face. Some people have come just for entertainment. Some will doubt, some will challenge. But there'll be a few who really want to change themselves. And I tell you, these lectures are only important for the few who want to change themselves. The lecture is the same. Our time is the same. But the attitude of the listener and the speaker determine what really goes on. Lord Swaminarayan gave a very beautiful example describing this part. Once he was sitting in an assembly and a dog was chasing a rabbit. And the whole of the devotees were following the dog and the rabbit, and he was neck and neck, running close. He was about to kill the rabbit, and suddenly the Lord said the rabbit will live. And it did live. Now the devotees took their eyes away from the dog and the rabbit, and they turned towards the Lord and said, but why did it live? And the Lord said, because the dog was running for food and the rabbit was running for life. Running was the same. Both were doing it neck and neck. Energy in kilojoules was the same. But the attitude of the dog was for food, and the attitude for the rabbit was life. So even here in the system, there are people who listen for entertainment, and there are people who listen for life. Those who listen for life succeed in the longer run than those who listen for entertainment. And the greater wonder is, okay, we have 1 million attitudes all around us, correct. But like Mukesh Bhai said, that all our attitudes are self-programmable. Computers, you need somebody else to program, but attitudes, you have to self-program. To give you a very simple example, I don't want to move out from this hole. You know what programmable attitudes can do? A very straightforward example. All of us are sitting here. If Mukesh Bhai made a statement, very simple statement, that Brahmavihari Swami will be speaking to us for 15 minutes. You have programmed yourself. And then if I speak for 20 minutes, everybody starts looking at their watch and they say, oh, it's too much. He's wasting our time. And oh God. But if I speak for 20 minutes, no change. But if Mukesh Bhai earlier on had said that Brahmavihari Swami will be speaking for 20 minutes, the speaker hasn't changed, the material hasn't changed, nothing has changed. The attitude in your mind has changed, and you'll say, oh, what a wonderful speaker. So don't blame me if you get bored, it is your attitude. It's very important that the attitude, we can self-program our attitude to either be happy or unhappy. It's so easy, we are constantly doing it. You can't tell me it's difficult, we do it every day. But we have to now, when we are constantly doing it, we have to do it consciously. That's the difficult part. If you want to go to sleep and you naturally go to sleep, no problem. But if you can't go to sleep and if you want to consciously go to sleep, it's a big, big problem. To do something, if you naturally do something good, it's okay. But if you have to consciously do something good, it becomes a challenge. My concept today is that we can program. But Mr. Oden has said that the problem with humanity is we rather ruin ourselves than change our attitude. A man would go to an extreme extent but fail to change his attitude. It's a real thing, huh? You must have heard of Dr. Samuel Johnson. He was a British guy. And as British people, I was in England, that's why I'm telling you, and edit this if it's a bit too far. But every British guy has to have some prejudice for somebody. You know, there was a saying that if a British guy is patting you on the back, you know, be sure he's searching for a place to stab you. The right place should be there now. Okay? So there was a saying, and this saying was said by the French people. So they are equally friendly with the British. Okay? And I just wanted to tell you that this Dr. Samuel Johnson, he was a British guy, but he had an ingrained prejudice for Scotland. He hated Scotland. Once in the midst of his career, some reporters, some people, they planned a very simple conference and he had to go to Scotland. All his life he had never said anything good for Scotland. That was his attitude. But once while he was forced, he kept his lips so tight. By nature the British have tight-lipped. And this guy made sure they were sewn right to the brim. But as you know, the media are even more intelligent. So the media, while this Dr. Samuel Johnson was about to leave after the lecture, the media gathered him and said, what do you like about Scotland and this and this, this and this? He was quiet. Instead of saying, what do you like about everything, the media forced him into one question, interesting question. They asked him, what is the best thing you like about Scotland? He has to say something now. You might hate anything, but what is the best thing you like about Scotland? You know what he said? The best thing I like about Scotland is the road that leads to England. Some attitude. I just wanted to let you know that if a person, he may ruin himself, get embalmed or established as a certain person rather than change. Dr. Bernie Siegel, who has experimented with medicine, science, prayer, emotions, a lot of things, he gives two nice examples which are important here. He says, even if you know that the attitude is hurting you, we don't want to give it up. He goes to the extreme of giving an example of a Jewish patient he had, and that patient had been a victim of the Holocaust. The Germans and the SS people had hurt him, psychologically scarred him. This man, because of that pain, had been hospitalized. In the hospital, he kept on hurting himself, so Dr. Siegel went up to him and said, you know something? You don't really have a medical problem, but you have to learn to forgive the Germans because something is happening to your heart. And this Jew, he kept on telling him, but doctor, I can't forgive them. They did this to me, that to me, this to me, that to me. And the doctor said, you'll have to forgive them for your own safety. And the Jew did not forgive them right till the end. And you know the shocking story? He grew a cancerous lesion on his heart. It is very rare that you get cancer of the heart. But he kept on hurting inside, that ultimately he grew a cancer of the cardiac fiber. And Siegel writes, it was true that the Germans had hurt him and hospitalized him, but it was the Jew himself who finally put in the last nail in his own coffin. It was his own attitude. Another lady, he said, I tried to save her because she had problems with her husband and she was suffering. And I told that lady that you have to forgive your husband and forget him. And that lady was very spiritual and she kept on saying, no, doctor, I can't. And suddenly the doctor said, what if God came from heaven and told you to forgive your husband? And do you know what she said? But Siegel, God might have made my husband, but he's not married to him. Making somebody is one thing, and being married to somebody is something else. This lady could not give up her attitude, and she suffered. I just wanted to reiterate one fact which I want to take you into a different direction. The fact is, how many homes have we seen fragmented because of attitude? How many businesses we have seen sink because of attitude? How many friendships we have seen broken because of attitude problems? How many nations we have seen declaring war because of attitude problems? They really don't have any enmity, but because of attitude problems, this is one of the things that it can go to a certain extreme. I want to take you one step further, that to such an extreme the world can move because of our own attitude problems. It's a small imaginary story, but the deeper you go into the story, it becomes much, much more real than reality. There was an international competition, essay competition, and the title was Our Future. In that competition, the winner of the essay, he begins the writing like this. He says that 70 years have passed. Listen to this very carefully. 70 years have passed. Nothing lives on this planet. Nothing stirs. No building stands. The Third World War has just ended. And in the distant horizon where everything is barren, there is only one tree standing. The author moves closer to that tree, and suddenly from that tree, something sways and a figure jumps out. Nothing on the planet survives or moves, and one figure jumps out from the tree. The author goes closer to that tree and looks at the figure. It's a figure of a monkey. The monkey has bent down, has clasped his hands, looking skywards and mumbling something, and the author grows closer to the monkey. And do you know why? What the monkey is saying? The monkey is looking towards the sky and praying to God and saying, "Oh God, don't ever make the mistake of making me into a man again." It might sound as a funny story, but now let's go deeper into this imaginary story. The depth of the story is, once man was respected as the crown of creation, and here they have turned him into a clown. The joke, it pokes at a very startling reality that, think about it, man has denigrated to such an extent that he has lost respect for life. You don't find any other animal abusing nature, creating pollution, or polluting the waters. You only find man which has lost respect for nature and is continuously polluting. He goes one step further and saying that man has also lost respect for other forms of life. If I really tell you, we've been to Hong Kong, we've been to China, we've been to Thailand, and I think man has begun to eat almost everything that moves. It's shocking, huh? We have lost respect for life around us, and the climax of a nuclear war is losing respect for the human species themselves. When nothing stands, we seem to have lost respect for ourselves. What a miserably negative attitude. That's what I want to tell you. All this was an imaginary story for me until I came up with facts which support it now. The story was imaginary. I could bear it. But recently, in Focus magazine, if many of you read that magazine, it's a scientific magazine. Recently in Focus magazine, there was a survey. And in that survey, great thinkers, social analysts, psychologists, and scientists, they started to think that how could our world end? What could be the future scenario of the world? And they worked out 11 different ways. I'll quickly mention them. They worked out 11 different ways how our world could end in the future. Imagine, all ways are pessimistic. There was a time by the turn of the earlier century where all predictions were utopian. They will have enough food, there are enough things, there'll be harmony, there is peace. Now I think if somebody talks about peace, he's looked at them with different looks, you know that? He says, is he really meaning peace? So you look at this, all scenarios are pessimistic, and the first thing they say, the world might end, nuclear war, number one. The second thing, they said the pollution gets too far up, it will destroy the saprophytic organisms which will destroy our food chain, and life will be wiped off through pollution. The third thing they say, because of huge eruptions and volcanic eruptions, our world might end. The fourth thing, which is common, they say the ozone layer disappears, greenhouse effect, everything heats up, floods, and the world will be inundated. The fifth, they say there could be an energy blast. If another planet passes by the Earth, the transfer of energy could destroy life on Earth. The sixth, they say, if once the sun has a big flare, you know, when you have a small fire and suddenly the fire has a flare, if once the sun has a big flare, the Earth could be singed. The seventh, they say, because we are at the equator and the North Pole and the South Pole are cold, if the Earth just shifts the equator like this, don't think about it, the Earth has to just go a bit sideways, it's all over. The eighth, they say, none of our fault, a meteor can just come around and strike us, and it's all over. The ninth, they say, there are intergalactic dust clouds. The dust cloud just happens to come in between the sun and the earth. Heat is blocked, we are pushed into an ice age, and we die. The 10th, they say, through our experimentation with biological systems, man may produce a superbug which can eat up and disease the entire humanity, and we could die. These are the 10 I've said, but the 11th, they say, the most dangerous, which could destroy humanity before a nuclear holocaust. Before any of the other 10, all the social scientists have unanimously said the 11th scenario of the world is the problem of negative thinking. They have written that negative mental attitude is a problem with our earth and globe. And they foresee that such a negative mental attitude has crept into the world where all scenarios are pessimistic. Now ask yourself, mankind is perhaps the only species, all of us, which can imagine its extinction and do nothing about it. We are the only group on this earth which can foresee a third world war. Everybody talks about it, but nobody can do anything about it. Perhaps no species, the lions, they cannot imagine their own extinction. No species on this earth is powerful enough to wipe out the entire population. Only man, and as I talk to you, even I feel I can't do anything about it. It's a problem that has crept into our brains, this negative mental attitude. We have to come out of the shell in a different way. And unless we come out of it, there is no way we can really go out beyond it. It's very important that, nowadays, because we find suicides are very common, we have accepted it, it doesn't really bother us. Because so many things we accept it generally, it doesn't really bother us. So my biggest thing is that negative mental attitude is bad, but worse still is, man takes pride in his negative mental attitude. Wars are glorified. Crimes are condoned. Corruption has become a way of life. Then don't blame the police. Look at that, the way we are moving into it, we have certified all these mental attitudes to such an extent that I want to tell you that just after a terrorist attack, as if some group has invented something nice and powerful, all terrorist groups start claiming it and patenting the attack. What a foolish attitude. You've created destruction and you want to own that you have created that destruction. Never, nobody would think of this. Forget about that. We take pride in even simple things. Nowadays, politics, and please forgive me if anybody is involved, I don't want to be any bad about it, but nowadays, even politics, people rule the country and the states by creating more chaos than order. Chaos has become a way of life, and there was an interesting story when we were back in England when studying. Some people got together, professionals like you, and they were discussing that whose profession is the oldest. And somebody, obviously the doctors, they have a big attitude. Please forgive me. But because everybody always creeps to the doctors, and they're always in a hurt position, and doctor is a healer. He's almost playing God, And they obviously always say that actually it's God that heals and the doctor takes the fees. But I'll tell you very honestly, if your arm is broken, the orthopedic only plasters it up. For 1 month, your own body heals it up, and then you go to the orthopedic and say, sir, you did it. Actually, you did it. God heals and the doctor takes the fees. This is the normal tradition. But the doctors and the surgeons came up first in this small gathering. He said, look, we are the oldest profession in the world. Because, after Adam was born, God wanted to create Eve, and he took out the rib from Adam's body to make Eve. So obviously God needed the help of a surgeon first. So surgeons are the oldest profession. Then before the surgeon could stop, straight away The engineer said, but wait a minute, before God made man, he made the mountains, he made the waters, he made the sun and the moon. And obviously the sun had to stand suspended in the sky without falling. He must have needed engineers for that, keeping it up in the steady in the sky. But before the engineer could sit down, the architects came into the bound and said, but sir, who gave the designs that this is what you call a sun, and this is a tree, and this is a river, and this is a mountain? So obviously the architects came into the picture, and the architects said, because before the designs, everything was just chaos. And that's when the politician got up. He said, but who created the chaos? Perhaps the oldest definition or the profession must be of a politician. But I wanted to tell you that I want to bring to your attention that we tend to glorify terrorism. We tend to glorify chaos. We tend to turn a blind eye. We all know pornography and drugs are bad. Everybody knows it in their heart that it is bad. But the problem is, everybody secretly enjoys it. That's why we can't stop it. I may be harsh, but this is a real fact. We all know it's bad. But inside our heart, there are feelings which advocate it in a different manner, and we can't speak out against it. Because it's good business and makes money, people justify it. So I want to tell you that all these things that affect you, me, and everybody are psychologically justified by us. That's why they continue to exist. Once I got hold of a medium and I said, why do you print so many scandals? Why do you just continually, change things, report this? He says, Swamiji, there was a time when media was reporting history. Now media reports sensationalism. That is our role. We are not historians. If he can agree to the fact, but we endorse it because we read it. The most important fact is that there is a global negative attitude, and that attitude is seeping into us. But then you might tell me that, Swami, how does that global attitude affect me as an individual? The biggest problem, that's why I want to mention this, only then you can really feel like going positive, is whether you like it or not, every global event affects you and me. Every global event. Now the scientists have found out that the El Nino, which creates a lot of global climatic changes, is a problem that starts somewhere on the shores of Japan and ends up somewhere in the shores of South America, and everybody in the middle starts suffering. Just a simple effect of balance changes everything. It's very important that we realize this, that we find naturally by breathing pollution, we are decreasing the strength of the human body. We really don't know, but it affects us. So by thinking negative thoughts in the world around us, it affects our mind very clearly. How does it affect our mind? One example will suffice to give you all the ideologies inside this. That in America, basically, if you go to America, there is a big fear of muggers. People can catch hold of you and mug you. They can show you a gun and then you can be mugged. It's a big fear. And one of the center points of this fear is Central Park. That's in New York. And it's also, everybody walks through that Central Park. I've had the pleasure, even as a sadhu I have run. There was nobody to steal nothing from me. Still, you have a body and you can get beaten up. So, suddenly your steps start going faster. So one morning, normally early in the morning there are joggers who jog around in this park. So one morning, one jogger was jogging regularly in the park, normally because he had a circuit in this Central Park. Now the Central Park is famed for muggers and people who steal and hit and everything. So while he was jogging, he found that another man behind him was jogging and breathing heavily. He looked over his shoulder and he started jogging faster. And that man was still jogging behind him with a faster pace and the breathing good heavily. And that man thought, my God, he started running faster. Then suddenly the other man caught up with him, and while they were jogging on a narrow path, the other man just brushed past him and overtook him. The fact this guy brushed past him, this man stopped and checked for his wallet, and he was missing. The wallet was missing, so he ran behind that guy. The other man was running faster. That man ran behind him, got hold of his neck, and I said, "You, give me the wallet." And that man produced the wallet. This man put the wallet in his pocket, and he was so proud of himself that he fought his own battles and did not depend on the government. He said, "I'm going to go home and give a big lecture to my child." When he went home, a proud father, there around his dinner table, while they were having breakfast, he said, "Son, I'll teach you how you should live in life." He said, "I was going this, and this guy, and this. But he looked at his table, and he found out that he had actually forgotten his wallet at his home in the beginning. Suddenly he took out the other wallet and he started examining, whose wallet is this? He was some Mr. Smith. And he felt so embarrassed, and then he phoned that guy and said, "Sir, were you there this morning in this Central Park?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Were you jogging?" He said, "Yes, at this time." He said, "Did you brush past me?" He said, "Yes." He said, "But I know that I chased you and I got hold of your neck because I thought that you had stolen my wallet and you were a mugger. But why did you give me your wallet?" He said, "I thought you were a mugger." I just want to tell you one very simple thing, that both were honest people. But because in the climate, there was a climate of thievery, both became thieves in the eyes of others. Because the criminals in the court, they are criminals. They always think that every judge can be bought. Because we think the police are corrupt, the police always think that the people will pay. It is a system that works against us. We have to learn to come out of the system. A general environment of the global attitude affects your day-to-day attitude. I'll be very honest. Let's go to 9/11. Before 9/11, before the World Trade Centers came down, every guy who traveled on a plane was either a luxury traveler or a business traveler. And now, every guy is looked upon like a terrorist. So much checking. Because just one guy takes some explosive in his shoe, every shoe is been examined by people who climb in American flights. Huh? I think all the key people, they probably need to employ professional cobblers, rather than security people. Imagine just by one act, our life changes. This is what I want to tell you. You can't confine yourself into caves and put blinkers on and think, "I can't worry about the rest of the world." Forget about that. You need to worry. The riots in Ahmedabad. You say, "It didn't affect me, sir. I was all in a safe place." But I'll tell you, overnight, most societies grew their walls. Normally only trees grow, but walls began to grow. And every society had a strong door. And suddenly security people came into demand. And they could charge their own breath. Imagine one simple example and the psychology of the world and the system we live in starts changing. But it changes to such an extent that values are put aside. One boy, I'm not talking about just fear, I'm not just talking about terrorism, I'm not just talking about crime. One boy, he came to the temple, Swaminarayan temple, to me just a couple of months back, and he said, "Swami, I'm getting married." I said, "Good." I said, "Have you talked with the girl and have you talked with the family? Everything is fine?" He goes, "No, Swami, everything is fine, but there's one problem." I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "When I was talking with the girl, and she told me," she's a very honest woman. I said, "That's very good." But she told me point blank that if I don't get along with you, I won't give you a reason, but we'll take divorce. And I said, "You are getting married?" He said, Yeah, I'm getting married." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "But Swami, she's an American citizen." So that's when I realized he was getting married to America and not the girl. And that's also when I realized that the girl was entering into a contract, not a ceremony. Because if she could say in a marriage that I could give you a divorce just like this, and still this guy felt he could get married, what would become of the marriage? I just want to let you know that certain things that move in society determine our attitude as individual. But just as the globe influences individual attitudes, don't be disheartened, individuals can influence the global attitudes. Don't feel that you're a simple nobody who can't influence the world attitude. There have been individuals at this negative time of this moment. There has never been a greater need for positive attitude than today. There have been great individuals. For example, Mahatma Gandhi, one man. He could come out with the weapon of non-violence. He could take up a challenge of a great empire. He could negotiate with the government without any papers. And the system of Gandhi was such that when Jan Smuts of South Africa, the premier, and Churchill got together, they were on the same flight going to Tehran to meet Stalin. When two of them were on the plane, and when Churchill was asked by Jan Smuts that, have you met Gandhi? Churchill, the leader of a great empire, said, I refuse to meet him. And General Smuts said, but why? He said, I feel when I'm in his presence, he might change my nature. Imagine Gandhi had so much power and influence that by being in the presence of a great empire, he could change the nature of a person. This was the power. We belong to a culture which has nurtured us in a system that our nature can influence the world in a different way which nobody else can. You take the example for Edison. Edison, the nature, the attitude of Edison was just simple, pure perseverance. Perseverance to such an extent that he was kicked out of school by the age of 9. He lost one of his ears by the age of 10. Somebody slapped him. And then he was removed from a job by the age of 14 with no job, no schooling. He went into the basement of his house, and the basement of his house, through sheer perseverance, became the center point of world's discoveries. He discovered 1,300 different systems. But look at his attitude, that's what I want to tell you. That at the age of 83, he is about to die in a year or two. He was supported by his wife, and somebody had just brought a design of a helicopter. And Edison said, oh, I can change this design and make it better. Let's go to the lab. At the age of 82, this man has the energy and the attitude to work on and on. Once his wife got so tired, this man worked for 20 hours. No rest, no holidays, nothing, no fun. Once his wife told Edison, he said, why don't we have a vacation? Edison said, but where can we go for a vacation? For more than 30 years, he had worked non-stop. And the wife says, Edison, something that has always come into your dream like when you were a child, a place where you feel so comfortable, a place where you feel relaxed, away from work, something you feel so nice about. Edison said, that's the exact place I know. Next morning, they packed a picnic bag. They took everything for relaxation. Edison took hold of his wife and took her into the laboratory. He said, this is the place. This is the place that comes into my dreams. This is the place where I feel most relaxed. And when business people tell me that, Swami, I need a break from business, from home, I think you need a break from your attitude. If you can change your attitude in a simple way, then even your business becomes pleasurable, your home becomes, almost like a temple. It's very important. You go a step further, we have Sita. One lady, she could influence the minds of all the ladies of India. We met a psychologist and he told us, Swamiji, one of the reasons why divorces are less in India, it is because of the mindset of the Indian women. No credit to the male, huh? And I'm serious, he specifically said that no credit to the male, he said the mindset of the Indian woman. Because of the story of Sita, people so many times say, why didn't Sita give a divorce to Ram, and why didn't this happen, why this and that. All these are Western thoughts influencing us and trying to find problems in our own system. But because Sita remained faithful to Ram in the trials and tribulations of all her life, through that generational impact, the Indian women have learned to tolerate much more than the common lady in the outside world. We have a system where individuals can influence global attitude, individuals can influence national attitude. This is a system we live in. Then we also have Lincoln, one single man, his attitude towards slavery, he broke it. The attitude of equality can change people. But the simple question you will have is, Swami, okay, correct, global attitude affects the individual attitude. Individual attitude can affect the global attitude. But then I personally am not a Gandhi. I am not a Sita. I myself, I am not Lincoln. So what about me? What could happen? For everybody present in this hall, I want to make a very clear sentence that you don't have to be a Gandhi. You don't have to be a Luther King. You don't have to be anybody important to have a positive attitude. Your positive attitude will make you important. Gandhi is important because of positive attitude, not because he was born as Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. It is his attitude that made him different. So your own personal attitude, positive attitude, will influence the world you live in. Why can't you decide to make your life, the life of your family, the life of your friends, the business and your street much, much more productive and positive by being a positive person? And if you can be a positive person, by changing your world, you are changing the world. One man, he was on the beach, and the beach had washed out thousands of starfish. In the mid-hot summer, the starfish, was struggling and drying out. They were dying. This man, he was walking on the beach. He picked up one starfish and threw it into the water. Another starfish into the water. There were thousands of starfish lying on the beach. Another man tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Young man, what will you achieve by throwing 2 or 3 starfish into the water? You can't make a world of a difference." And you know what the man said? He picked up the 3rd starfish and he said, "Sir," he threw the starfish into the water and he said, "I made a world of a difference for that starfish." You understand that? That you don't have to change the world, but if you can change somebody else's world, even one person's world, you've made a world of a difference for that person. It's very important that we understand this and start being a positive person now and in the future. How positive? It is said in the title itself that positive expectation attracts positive results. But the problem is, you have to start first expecting something positive from yourself. Everybody starts expecting positive from everybody else. They say, "Yeah, you expect something positive from me, then I'll give it to you. Don't expect me to be positive about you. I'll expect positiveness." Yogiji Maharaj, Pramukh Swami's guru, he was once in Bombay, and he started talking about sharing, that everybody should have Surat Bhav, meaning intimacy, and we should share and share alike. So one poor man, he stood up and he said, "Swamiji, I'm a very poor guy and all these people are businessmen. Tell them to share their money with me." It's not a tricky situation. It's a right question. He said, "Share and share alike." And you know what Yogiji Maharaj said? He said, the quality of sharing is that if you have half a rotlo to eat, is to break it into a half and give it to other person, eat only half. That is the quality of sharing. We tend to feel that everybody else should share with us, but the question is that you should share with everybody else. This is the height of a positiveness that we should do. So if you have a positive attitude and expectation from yourself, you can make wonders from wherever you are. You must have heard of the name, a French Canadian. His name is Eric Van Hanema. This man, just recently he climbed Mount Everest at the age of 35. You will tell me, "Swami, Mount Everest, many people climb now, there's no problem, it's simple." But this French Canadian, he was fully blind. He had become blind by the age of 13. That man decided that he wanted to climb Mount Everest, and just last year he climbed Mount Everest all on his own with somebody to just guide him. And see the power. A whole IMAX film industry followed him, that if the most important part in the world could be not that Tenzing and Hillary climbed Mount Everest, but a blind man could climb Mount Everest. Perhaps because we can see it, we refuse to climb it. If we couldn't see it, perhaps we could climb it. Sometimes our own fears defeat us much before than the real challenges. But I wanted to tell you that a blind man, if you could muster up enough expectation from himself that you could climb Mount Everest, then there is no distance that you cannot assail. You have to start expecting positive results from your brain. Another very important story that continuously inspires me is that of Legson Kaira. He was a 14-year-old boy in Nyasaland, somewhere in the middle central Africa, Nyasaland. He found 2 pages from a Bible or some American magazine which was lying in the desert, and it had the name of Lincoln and the name of the country America. So he took these papers to his mother, a very primitive tribe. And that man, little boy, told his mother that, "Mom, you pack me a lunch, I want to go to America." And the mother, it is written in the book, the mother packed him a lunch of maize, because in that place you can't have anything but maize. And that lunch would last him, she said, "Okay, maybe how far is America?" And the boy said, "Maybe 2 or 3 days." At a time when nothing was available. So his mom packed him a lunch box of 2 or 3 days of maize. This little boy, he took that lunch, he started walking from Nyasaland. If you know Africa, Nyasaland is in the center, and he started walking northwards. He kept on asking everybody, "Okay, where is America?" And everybody said, go up, because they knew in the map is up, but where up? This little boy started walking. Then as he walked on and on, then people started wondering, this little boy has decided to walk to America. He suddenly went into the embassy. The Ugandan embassy came up, said, "This boy is a star, he's walking to America." And to him, he just kept on walking. People started helping him. Somebody gave him a pair of shoes, and they said that in America you can't walk barefoot. So what he did, he slung the shoes over his shoulder and still walked barefoot. He said, "I want to keep them for America." This Legson Kaira, a 13-year-old boy, he started walking. For 2 years he constantly walked. And he reached Cairo in Egypt. The whole world stood shook. Then Yugoslavia came up, Bulgaria came up, Russia came up. That, "We'll take you in one of our university, you study here." This guy said, "But I've started my journey to America." Until he reached Cairo, he did not know how far was America. And perhaps that is why he walked. Sometimes it's our own knowledge that really destroys us beforehand. And when he landed in Cairo, young children in American schools, they started gathering money to sponsor this little boy, a black African, into America. And he was flown to America, where the children received him. He studied there. He became a PhD in political science from Cambridge University. And he himself has written a great book called Looming Shadow. And I've also had the pleasure of meeting him. Imagine the attitude of a young boy that he could walk right to America. But if he had the attitude, the whole world came forward to help him. The attitude is to expect from yourself first. He expected that I can do it. He never expected help from anybody else. Expect from yourself. If you've heard of Michael Johnson, the famous runner, who got 2 gold medals in 200 and 400 meters, before the final Olympic race, you know what he said? Everybody was on the track training and hard, heaving and working hard and everything. Michael Johnson, he sat in his hotel, and in his mind he said, "I ran the 200 and a 400 meter race almost 100 times, right from the chute, right from the first hit, right from the finish line. I ran over in my positive expectation in my mind 100 times." And then he said, "Then what happened?" He said, "Then The real thing was a reflex action. What we tend to do is work out in the real thing and the rest becomes reflex action. He said, I did it so many times in my mind that the real thing became a reflex action. That's how, if you positively expect from yourself, you move ahead. The greatest story that we have in our scriptures is that of Nachiketa, a young boy sent to hell by his father's misdeeds. And when that boy goes to hell, he never complains about his father. Today, if you do something to your child, it's in the newspapers. Everybody is knowing about it. Here this child, he is pushed into hell by his dad's commands, and he's waiting at the doorsteps of hell, waiting for the king of death. And you know what he thinks to himself? Listen to this so beautifully. He says, Om Bahuna Memi Prathamo Bahuna Memi Madhyamaha Kim Swim Madhyasya Kartavyam Yanmayadya Karishyati. He says, okay, I'm going to hell. Look at his attitude, that when I go to hell, should I be a third grade person there, or should I be a second grade person, or should I be the best in hell? And then he decides that even if I go to hell, I still should be the best in hell. Can you see? Even if you fail, you should still be the best amongst failures. I'm talking about it, that such an attitude was in this boy's mind, that the king of death, when he meets the child, and he tells the child, what do you want from me? And the child says, I only want one thing from you. And he says, what? Give me the knowledge of defeating death. And the king of death was also a sportsman person. There was a time when he could teach him the technique of defeating himself, and Nachiketa came out with it. I'm trying to tell you, even in the times of your toughest times, if you have the right attitude, you come out with the most important experience of your life. So the first thing is to be positive expectations for yourself. But the second most important thing, that people always want to be positive for themselves but negative for others. So the second thing, that if you are positive for others, if you expect something positive from others, they will respond positively. And this is a foregone conclusion. If you are constantly negative at your home, if you're constantly fighting with your wife, she only begins to learn that this is the only language she can talk to you in. You are teaching different languages. If you are always nagging your child, he only understands that this is the only way I can relate to my dad. If your child is coming with, maybe a glass of water, and you said, don't drop it, I'll tell you he'll drop it. If you overdo it, he'll do it. It's very important that you start having positive expectations from things around you. When Dr. President Kalam came to meet Swamiji, he said, Swamiji, I am a nobody, I am a son of a fisherman, but because all my teachers and professors kept on expecting positive things from me, I became the president. Imagine, he himself has said that constantly my teachers, constantly my friends, and this is what made me into what I am. Otherwise, I am a nobody. It's very important. You must have heard that there was a boy, he decided to commit suicide. And he was going to drown in his village lake. 15-year-old boy who was a clerk before. Before committing suicide, he decided to write a simple note to his English teacher. He loved English classes. He said, sir, I have wished to end my life. I'm dying. And the English teacher said, I can't stop you from dying. But I knew one thing, that in the class, you always wrote beautiful essays. Why don't you write to me why you want to die? And that boy took up the pen and began writing, and he was H.G. Wells. He has written 84 books on this earth, one of the most prolific writers that the world has seen, because one positive expectation from a teacher changed his life. One little positive expectation from a father to your son will change him. Give him a chance. Give him a chance. If an unknown teacher can change a life of an unknown student, why can't a father with a slight positive expectation from his child change the life of his son? He can, but you have to give him a chance. Another great famous neurosurgeon, you must have heard of his name, Ben Carson. He attended a big giant neurosurgery conference because he had performed a 23-hour neurosurgery operation, splitting a child, two children which had a single brain. You know, you can divide the hands and the feet and everything, but to divide the brain without a single dying. So he performed a 23-hour operation. Ben Carson, he's a black man. And when in his honor everybody had gathered to praise him, he raised his hands. He says, "Can you identify the hands?" And everybody said they belong to one of the greatest surgeons of America, Ben Carson. He said, "I want to tell you the truth, that once these hands, they wielded a knife. When I was a young boy, once these hands was full of stones and I broke many windows. When I was a young boy, once these hands gave so many exam papers which all failed." He said, "I, until 15, was a dropout of school. I had been caught by the police a couple of times. I had wielded a knife and stabbed some friend," he admitted in front of the people. "And I was failing my exams left, right and center. But once my mother, she became so upset. He got hold of me, he said, 'I'm taking you to a library.' And they said, 'But we don't want to go to school.' She said, 'Don't go to school, but go to a library. And every week you have to tell me a story that you read from the library.' And she started giving books to this boy, and this boy had to read the book and tell her the story. Every week, he said, I started reading a story, and you know what happened? I started growing interest in books. I started studying. Then my mom did not have to tell me to study at all. But until I became a doctor, I never knew that my mother could not read herself. But one positive expectation from an illiterate mother can turn a ruffian into one of the greatest neurosurgeons of today. It's very important that you don't have to be educated to have a positive expectation. You don't have to be a doctor to turn your child into a doctor. You don't have to be successful to make your people around you successful. So positive expectation makes things moving. One simple example, everybody praises BAPS and our institution for, management, maybe giant festivals and so many different things. If you had seen in 1985, we had a very big festival just near here, near Manav Mandir, Kunati Dvishatabdi Mahotsav. That's when we got our Diksha in 1985. And it was not in the papers, but I think I can tell you that suddenly one morning, there was a huge 300 feet by 150 feet, cane and jute gate, which was built by Bengali artists. There were special artists, nobody could do, we had to bring them specially from Bengal. And suddenly, one afternoon, it caught fire. Okay, it caught fire and it was burning. And half of the gate burnt. The other, we could stop the fire, and we were all, downfallen. We were all worrying what would happen. And, to leave half a gate, the whole world would realize there was a mishap. We had helped out, like for example, it was not like, for example, people were wondering, but people would worry. So while all sadhus, the leaders who were there, were wondering what to do, we gave an idea that it's best to remove the other half. So if there was no gate, nobody expects anything. Nothing. This is the way intelligence would think. Because there's no way we could bring in the Bengalis, it would take them another 1 week to finish off. You can't do it. That's when Pramukh Swami arrived in his car. And then he saw that all of us were frustrated. He said, everybody take a break. Then he asked some devotee who had made ice cream at his home. He said, serve everybody ice cream. We thought when you had a big major fire, a giant problem, where everybody is worried, is crisis. And here is Swami saying, serve everybody ice cream. While everybody cooled down for a while, Swami said that I think, you can make the other half. And then he left. After he left by saying we can make the other half, positive expectation. Within 2 days, Mukesh Bhai, sadhus and volunteers built that gate on their own without any Bengali artists. Within 2 days. And you know the outcome of that is? Since then, we've had major festivals in England, in America, in Nairobi, in Mumbai, and now in Delhi. And not a single time do we ever have to call any Bengali artist. The sadhus and volunteers can do it. Imagine it is not a one-off inspiration. By a simple positive expectation, you are inspiring people for life. If you expect, then things change, and things change in a much, much different way. We know that. There was a story that came across to us, and the story was very simple. That one man, see, positive expectation, one man, he loved bears. And he had a small bear which he had taken, and he was comforting, and it was always the bear would be with him. He loved the bear. He played, frolicked, mocked around with the bear. But when he had to travel from one city to another city on a permanent move, he could not take the bear with him. And what happened that he had to go and deposit that bear in the local zoo. And one last time he played with that bear in that cage, and with a heavy heart he shut the door and gave the keys to the zookeeper and left. After 5-6 years, he came back into the city, and the first place he went to is to see that bear. When he saw there was a crowd outside that cage, and this man straight away went near the cage, got hold of the key from the gatekeeper, opened the door and went inside the cage. And the whole crowd is aghast, watching. But he was comfortable. He prayed, wrestled, frolicked with the bear, turning it up and down, everything. For 15-20 minutes, it was a great fun system. Everybody outside started clapping for that man, that look how he plays with the bear. When he came out, and the people asked him that you're a brave man. He said, no, I'm not a brave man. Because this is my bear, and I love it so much that it responds to me. This is what he said. But then the zookeeper came. He said, sir, what are you talking about? He said, the bear in the first cage, it's mine. He said, no, sir, your bear died 2 years ago. This was another bear. That's when he started perspiring. He said, oh, good that I'm alive. But what I want to tell you, that even for a strange bear, if from his heart he had a positive expectation that it is my bear, the bear responded to him like his owner. I want to tell you that you could have the most difficult person around you, but if your heart is clean and you expect in the right way, even the most difficult person will respond. And the climax is that both of you could be at fault. It's a very important, it's a very sensitive story, but I think it's a very important message we should carry back. That once one man was sitting in a train, and what happened, that he got down at one station and he picked up another train. When that man went into one compartment, he found out that opposite him was another lady sitting in that compartment. Another lady was sitting in that compartment. This man was blind. And he looked out of the window because he heard the voice of that lady and it was sweet. But some people are blind, but their eyes are there because if he's got some retinal problem, then you can't see that he's blind. So he started looking out of the window as if he's seeing, and he started talking to that lady saying that, oh, what a beautiful day. And even the lady said, yes, the sun is out, it's beautiful, it's warm. And then this man said, but I like it, when the rivers are flowing. Look outside, the children. Every time he heard the sounds of children, he mentioned children. So whenever he mentioned, the lady, was comforting, she was talking back. They had a beautiful talk about nature, sun, children, goats, river, everything that passed across, from the train. And then when the next station came, the man was blind. The lady stood up, and the lady went out because it was a station, she went out. Just at that station, another man must have come into the train and came and sat into this compartment. The man straight away asked that man because he was hurting inside. That's such a beautiful voice. I talked with her for an hour. Now, what was her face like? Because he couldn't see her. So when the other man came in, he asked him that, sir, did you see a lady who came from this compartment? That man said, yeah. He said, she just came from my compartment. She went out. She didn't want to get mixed up with another lady, He wanted to make sure it had to be her. He said, yeah. He said, and so can you just tell me what she looked like? And that man said, she had a very beautiful clothing like this. She looked very beautiful. She was a very good-looking lady, very kind, generous. He said, that's exactly as you describe her. He said, yes. But there was one simple question. He said, what? I think she was blind. This man started thinking that the lady, when this man started talking to her about the things, she felt that the man is thinking that she's seeing. So she started joining him. When she started describing nature, the man thought that she is seeing. So when two blind people expect that both of them are seeing, they both seem to see each other. I'm trying to tell you that you could be blind, both of you could be failures, but if you have good attitudes towards yourself, you are in heaven. You don't have to be a successful husband or a miserable wife. You both could be failures, but if you have good attitudes towards yourself, you are successful. And last thing which I want to let you know, that positive expectation provides positive attitude, but that's the worldly way. There is one step beyond positive attitude, it is spiritual attitude. In spiritual attitude, there is no expectation and you are still positive. I'm not going to turn all of you into sadhus, don't worry. But I believe that I should share this secret with you. That how can a sadhu who has nothing still be happy? How can a sadhu, we have Tyag Sarva Swami in front of me. He is an electronic engineer from Cardiff University. He is in our temple and is taking care of our kitchen. For the last 25 years, he's been taking care of our kitchen. How can a person who had the best career give up the career and still be happy when all of us are trying to make a career? How can a person who has no money, who had infinite wealth, who gives up the wealth without money, I have to ask somebody else to pay for our rickshaw fare. Even today when I came here, I had to call a devotee to give me a ride here. How can a person or people who have nothing and no possessions still feel comfortable and full inside themselves? It's a spiritual, trademark, patented secret of India and India alone. Nobody in the world and no culture in the world can give you the highlight of this inner secret. It's a secret that even if somebody is negative to you, even if you expect something positive and if you still fail, even failures you can turn into success, because even failures can give you joy. It's a very tricky situation, I'm telling you, but spiritual attitude, the laws there are totally different. The Vedas say, Isa vasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat, tena tyaktena bhunjitaha magrudaha kasya svettanam. He says, give things up and everything becomes yours. What a logic. The Western world tells you, whatever you grab is yours. The rest, for the other hand, grab it again. This is the logic. Here he says that whatever you hold on to you doesn't remain yours. What you give up becomes yours. The laws are slightly different, but they keep you happy at every junction of life. The spiritual attitude of Buddha was different. Once he was sitting in meditation and one of his cousins, he fired an arrow and hunted a swan. The swan fell into Buddha's lap with the arrow inside the swan. This hunter came up to Buddha and said, in the meantime Buddha had removed the arrow and healing the swan, and the swan was quite getting well. And the hunter came up and told Buddha that this swan is mine, you give it to me. Buddha said, the laws in the spiritual world are different. In the material world, he who earns takes and keeps the belonging. In the spiritual world, you shot and tried to kill the swan, so it does not belong to you. I saved the swan, so it belongs to the guy who saves. It's very important that the world in the spiritual world is different. It keeps you happy even at a sacrifice. You don't have to do everything, but if you can sacrifice something, you become happy. We have the story of Ramanujacharya. When his guru gave him a mantra, he said, I'm giving you the secret of the secret of the secret mantra. And Ramanujacharya said, Guruji, what would happen if I chant it? He said, anybody who chants this mantra goes to heaven. But he said, only you should chant it. Next morning, to the horror of his guru, Ramanujacharya was standing in the top of the temple, and there were thousands of followers chanting the mantra. Then the Guruji of Ramanujacharya came up and got hold of him, and he said, you fool, what are you doing? He said, but Guruji, those who chant go to heaven. He said, no, but you have broken my word. So those who chant will go to heaven, but you will go to hell. And Ramanuja said, Guru, if millions can go to heaven, I am ready to go to hell. This is the spiritual attitude. It is not always a question of succeeding. It is also failing so that others succeed. We know the story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He wrote a commentary on Nyaya. When his friend and him were boating in the river Ganges, and his friend was also secretly writing a commentary on Nyaya, a beautiful commentary in Sanskrit. And his friend started crying, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, but why are you crying? He said, when some people read your commentary on Nyaya, nobody is going to touch my commentary. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu straight away picked up his commentary and put it into the river Ganges. We may have lost one of the best Sanskrit commentaries on Nyaya, but we've got an eternal example of what friendship should be. Spiritual attitude allows you to sacrifice a part of yourself so others can succeed, not just the Western attitude of succeeding at the cost of others. We have the story of Gunatitanand Swami, who was the successor of Lord Swaminarayan. He moved to a village, and a group of darbars beat the sadhus up, and they hurled abuse, persecuted them until they bled. Gunatitanand Swami with a group of his sadhus went to the corner, and some Bharwaj started saying, shepherds, that this chieftain of this village of Junasawar, why would God bless him with a son if he hurts poor sadhus like this? Straight away Gunatitanand Swami said, sadhus, we have a job to do. And maybe young ones like me must have thought, how we revenge. But suddenly Gunatitanand Swami said, let us pray. What for? That the chief is miserable because he does not have a son. May God bless him with a son. The laws of the spiritual world are different. Even if you are positive with somebody again and again and is continuously negative, you can still be positive because you are spiritually inclined to God. In the times of Arjuna and Krishna, Arjuna lost hope. When he started suffering, he said, I don't want to fight. Only thing Krishna did to Arjuna was to change the attitude of his mind. Nothing else. Arjuna said, Siddhanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishusyati roma harshascha jayate. My mouth is dry, my hair is standing on its end, my hands are trembling, my mind is spinning. And what Krishna said, he didn't, said, I'll give you a physiotherapy and just give you a glass of water and, get into and sleep down for a while, your mind will be calm. Only thing Krishna said, Klebyam masma gamaha partha neitvaitad upapadyate. Shudra hridaya dorbalyam tyaktva tishta parantapa. Get up, you fool. Get rid of your cowardice. Get up and fight for righteousness. Just by changing the attitude of Arjuna, Krishna could win a war. You don't have to have an army, but the right attitude could give you a right thing. And this is what Pramukh Swami specializes in. So many people tell us, Swamiji, you've built Akshardham. Something like, in the Akshardham, Swamiji's attitude was such, when we are opening the Gandhinagar Akshardham, even now you have 3 hours to see. And the Murti, the exhibitions, the multimedia show, this, that, so many things to see. We were all wondering that what should we show Pramukh Swami first, who is the inspirer of the monument. And we were all wondering, we show him this, that. When he came to the place, you know what Pramukh Swami said? Look at his attitude. He said, first show me the public conveniences. If you can keep them clean, only then this monument will remain clean. Look at the attitude, and I think the last thing that we would see in anybody's homes would be public conveniences. Pramukh Swami's attitude is such that you have to start at the bottom to reach to the top. Not just a wishy-washy ideology at the top and something really, weak in the bottom. He said you have to start. His ideology is that the spiritual attitude depends on your will and submission to God. All of you must have some secret belief in God. As Victor Hugo said, even the atheist, he writes, "Okay, one time or another, there comes a time in a man's life when his soul is on its knees." Sometimes we find that our soul is on our knees. We move ahead, and that's when we find this. Pramukh Swami always believes that whatever happens, happens through the will of God. As conclusion, I want to tell you that what we are constantly being praised for is the London Mandir, Sri Swaminarayan Mandir in England. It's a marvelous feat. The Reader's Digest called it the eighth wonder of Neaston. Then they were searching for 70 biggest wonders of the world, and they put it down in the 70 wonders of the 20th century. Then the Guinness Book put it down 3 rows in a commitment. It's a beautiful place. Nobody can do anything better about it. But even when Clinton came to meet Pramukh Swami, he said, "Swamiji, I had seen your work much before I'm meeting you." We were all puzzled. Where has he seen our work? He said, "When I was half an hour in London, Tony Blair took me in his private helicopter, and one of the first things he showed me in England was not the Big Ben, but your Swaminarayan temple." This is what Clinton said to Swami when he met him this time. So it has become almost like a symbol, okay? And when that monument was built in 2.5 years, we were present there building it. The French newspapers suddenly brought out, French and England have always had wars, because French always say the sun never set on the British Empire, because even God could not trust the British in the dark. So he always had to keep focuses on the British. So the French newspaper, after the London Temple was built, the French newspaper Le Monde brought out an article on the London Temple. We never told them. It was all natural. And do you know what they wrote as the title? "The Empire Strikes Back." And they wrote, for 200 years the British ruled and ruined India. And here, what a sweet way India has taken revenge by creating a beautiful monument in the heart of London. They wrote that the place from where the kings and queens of Britain has ruled, Piccadilly, that's where they took out our Murti's procession was taken out from Piccadilly. Not only that, but as you know, that the Protestants are firmly non-believers in Murti. And Prince Charles by default is the defender of the faith of Protestants. But the climax was when Prince Charles came to our London Mandir, he willingly performed the Aarti of the Murtis. And after that, the Archbishop, James Carey, he came up and he also performed the Aartis of the Murtis. And they said it is so beautiful that we want to be present, and all this went along. That is one thing. But I want to tell you that if I had to term our London temple, it could be one of the greatest failures of BAPS. If I can be honest with you, that we had searched, we had a very derelict piece of land in Neasden. Neasden is the most rundown. If you go around, it's like, maybe Gomtipur or some other place which is almost rundown. Neasden is the most rundown area in the whole of England. It is said it has never been mentioned in the newspapers, only once, when Churchill opened the window of his car and dropped a bit of cigar ash into Neasden. That was the only time it has been mentioned. Such a poor, rundown industrial estate. The highest crime rate in England is in Neasden. We were having a small temple and a small place area there, and we had searched for 18 different places in the whole of England, and we had failed all 18 times. We got a land in Harrow, and the neighbors started going against us, so we collected 40,000 signatures for the support of the project, and one of the best barristers, Lord Silso, who had represented Ian Botham in his case against drugs, one of the best, a barrister was representing us, and we lost. I'm going to tell, and this is the truth I'm telling you. Every Indian in England felt that this is the most biggest failure that BAPS is facing. Even we felt it, except Pramukh Swami. He said, we have tried our best, but I feel that the Lord wants to sit in Neasden, so let's build a temple in Neasden. And because of faith and devotion, what was supposed to be one of the biggest failures, the temple has transformed the entire area. And the climax was that after the temple was built, and we have, Sonana Kadash right at the top, 2 black young children came to our temple the 3rd or 4th day. And he said, there must be some magic in this area. And we said, what? He said, 2 nights ago we decided to climb the top of the spire and remove this golden Kadasha, because the black people are experts in that. But when we were starting to climb, we felt certain vibrations that we shouldn't do it. So we have come to tell you that we won't do it. Imagine, I'm just trying to tell you what started off like that, and now the climax is almost 2 million people visited every year. And just recently we got a message that the Queen is thinking of celebrating her 50th golden anniversary as the Queen, and she has decided to visit 2 most important places in England, and one of them is going to be Sri Swaminarayan Temple. I just want to tell you that if you work with spiritual faith and leave it to God, even your failures become successes. So as the conclusion, that the greatest discovery of the 20th century, according to William James, is not the computer, not the rocket, not the train, not the steam engine, not anything you see, not even the silicon chip, not even genetic engineering. He writes, the greatest discovery of the 20th century is that man can change his life by changing the attitude of his mind. If you can change the attitude of your mind, you can change your life, and you can change it by understanding others. You can change it by self-introspection. You can change it through prayer. When Gandhi was asked that you're such a small man, when you sit in prayer, do you think you can change the divine mind, the cosmic mind, a simple mind? Do you think your prayer can change the cosmic mind? And you know what Gandhi said? That I know I cannot change the cosmic mind, but at least by praying I can change my mind. If you start praying properly, you learn to change your attitudes. And Pramukh Swami very often says that towards your own self, your attitude should be of self-introspection. Towards your family, your attitude should be of sharing. Towards others, your attitude should be of love. Towards God, your attitude should be of faith. Towards your past, your attitude should be of forgiving. Don't carry your past with you. Leave it behind. Towards your present, your attitude should be of living. And towards your future, your attitude should be of hope. If you have positive, hopeful attitude, then if the whole world is negative, you can still succeed. I want to tell you that don't tire. If your whole family against you, have a positive attitude, you will succeed. If everybody in the business is against you, have a positive attitude, you will succeed. If the whole world moves against you, your positive attitude will help you survive. My only argument to you is this. When people tell me, Swami, everybody is corrupt, why can't I be? When they tell me, Swami, everybody is crooked, why can't I be? Somebody beautifully said the earth is not flat or round, it is crooked. Forget about the argument. But he said, everybody is crooked, why can't I be? My only argument to you is that if the whole world is blind and you are the only one with eyes, should you poke your eyes out as well? Or should you lead the world? If the whole world is limping and you are the only one with 2 good legs, should you chop off your leg as well? Or should you help and guide them? If you have a positive attitude, this last story before completing is a South Indian story of the great Alvars. And if there is one person with a good attitude, it means a big thing. There were 10 people. And the 10 people were moving from one area to another. All 10 were good buddies and friends. But it became worse, the weather became worse. Lightning started striking all over them. They were all superstitious and religious people. So they started thinking, then maybe one man is destined to die. And because of that man, the lightning keeps following us. So let us do one thing, that if that one man is destined to die, let him die so the 9 can live. So they went into a house, and the lightning started falling all around the house. So he said, okay, we have a tree right down there. Each one of us have to go to that tree in the middle of the storm and then come back. So the guy who is destined to die, the lightning will fall on him, and that's it, finished. So the first man is sweating it out. It's like Russian roulette. He goes, and with breathing heavily and happily, he comes back. The second goes, comes back. The third goes, he comes back. Fourth, fifth, sixth goes, he comes back. Then the 4 that remain are in full tension. Adrenaline pumping, acidity full up to the esophagus, right up to here. Everything is in tension. The 7th goes and comes back. The 8th, the 9th guy goes and comes back. There is only one guy remaining. He doesn't want to leave, because he leaves, he will die. All the 9 people force him out of the house, and they say, you better go. They drag him out. He said, you go to that tree and come back. And when that man, in desultory, sulking fashion, he goes to that tree, the lightning falls onto the house, all 9 die. Actually, it was because of this one man that the 9 were surviving. So, if you have one guy with a positive attitude, it is perhaps because of your positive attitude that your family is surviving, your business is surviving, and one positive person like Pramukh Swami, perhaps saints like him, are the presence why the earth is still surviving and happy today. So I just would like to pray again and again, that I really congratulate AMA for the great successes you have done, but the greatest spiritual attitude you have displayed is by sacrificing that award for somebody else. I think there could not be a greater management lesson than what AMA has been doing. Thank you once again for everybody.